Does God, in fact, influence the decisions you make here at the Capitol?
You know, there, undoubtedly, to some extent, yes. If you grow up in a religious household as a practicing in your faith, I think it's ingrained in you that it has some degree of impact on what you do on a day-to-day basis. It has varying degrees depending on how much emphasis you decide to put on it. You know, I try to be very mindful that there is things I do at home and that are part of my personal philosophy, and things that I must do or refrain from doing when it comes to the general public. And I try to have very distinct lines between those two things.
Why?
Because not everybody thinks the way I do. Not everybody subscribes to the same religion. And, you know, I have a certain philosophy. And, you know, even within my own faith, we all have our personal relationship with our greater power. And so, you know, there are certain things that are preached in the Catholic Church that I have a hard time reconciling personally. And I think that when I meet my God and I, you know, have my judgment day, that I have deep-rooted beliefs that things are the way I see them and not necessarily what has been told to me. And, you know, I've had a great experience having friends from a variety of faiths, and I don't think that it's my responsibility as a Catholic or as a Christian to come into the Capitol because I subscribe to a certain thought or because my faith believes a certain way that I have to imprint that on the masses. You know, I think that there's certain things we should focus on while we're here. Education, healthcare, infrastructure, opportunities, you know, the things that I grew up thinking of government. And sometimes we go off on this path of, you know, these social topics that are completely unnecessary, in my opinion, and take up time that we could be focused on, you know, providing for affordable college tuition or better pre-K or a variety of different things. I just think that, you know, there are some people who do it because they deeply believe. You know, David Simpson deeply believes and has convictions, and he has shown me that in positive ways too. But I think other people use it because it's an easy political button to push, and you know, that's unfortunate because the consequences are dire for those people that we are, you know, keeping out of the process or keeping from doing certain things.
I think I know the answer, but what are some of the social issues you referenced that were more of a priority this session than, you know, developing pre-K more,
right,
or putting resources into different things?
Right. You know, I am very pro-gay marriage. It might be a generational thing. Some folks very close to me growing up and who are some of my dearest people in my life are gay, and that personalizes that issue for me. And when I see us doing certain things in this Capitol to keep them from having some basic rights that all of us should have, that are more civil in nature than they are religious, I really take that to heart. And it's something that upsets me, where I've had to walk off the floor to calm down. I'm passionate about, you know, giving everyone the same opportunities that I have to protect their families, to have benefits, to do different things. And, you know, no one likes the topic of abortion. Personally, you know, I think that it should be something taken very seriously, but I am pro-choice, and I am pro-choice regardless of what my religious beliefs are, because they're my beliefs. I shouldn't put that on someone else. And I can understand maybe that issue a little bit more because there's life involved in it. And why someone would have more convictions. I don't understand why people are prejudiced against gay people. I cannot fathom that personally. The issue when it comes to life is different, and I can appreciate a little bit more, but I don't want to put my beliefs on other people. And, you know, I think that there's this misconception that people don't take that seriously when they make that decision to terminate a pregnancy. That's absolutely not true. It's the most important decision any couple or person will ever make. And anyone who I've known who has had to do that for whatever reason, the viability of the baby, whatever it may be, will forever live with that. And that is something they're going to have to reconcile. But it's not something I think that I need to focus on session after session. That topic's already been debated. It's already been litigated. We go back to it for unnecessary political reasons. Some exceptions to that where people truly believe. The David Simpsons, who I love David Simpson. I think he's a great man. We disagree emphatically on these issues, but he believes. He's a believer. And so, not that I excuse him, but I can at least appreciate. I think others doing it for an entirely different reason.
Your father's among those.
Yes, he is.
The other night, he was the Democrat who signed on to the resolution talking about defining marriages between one man and one woman. You talk about your Catholic upbringing. Do you think it is a generational thing? I mean, your father quoted scripture in defending his thoughts or where he was coming from in, supporting defining marriage between one man and one woman.
Right. I love my father. He has been a wonderful influence in my life. I will say my father's consistent. He's pro-life and all the way through. He wants to educate him, feed him. If you look at what he does, it's not just about once they're born and then saying good luck like some of the other people in this building. He's very much, let's have pro-life and then all the way through. Feed them, educate them, take care of them, provide them with opportunities. He's anti-death penalty. I mean, my father's consistent. On that issue, it might be a generational thing, but I don't think it was, and I've had to answer that question a lot in the last couple of days. I even have family members who are gay and that have called just devastated because of that. But, I think my father is not prejudiced against gay people. I just think he believes in traditional marriage. I disagree with him completely on that spectrum, but it doesn't come from hate. And I wouldn't be defending my father if I didn't truly believe that. He's a good man. He's always given the shirt off his back. He's been the rock of his 10 brothers and sisters and all the cousins. Anytime there's an issue, Dad shows up and tries to take care and be that loving family member. But, he believes what he believes. And I think that as he started to get feedback, he withdrew his support of that or withdrew moving forward with that piece of legislation. But I'm not here to defend my father. I'm not here to make excuses, but I truly can say from what I've seen and my experiences with my dad does not have hate in his heart. And it's not, it wasn't a thing that was prejudice. It was just something he believes. So for whatever he does to push that issue, I will counter it in the House because, I honestly believe this is a big civil rights issue of this generation, and I will fight to protect it.
You mentioned education briefly. I mean, when we're talking about education or, I know a big aspect of that this session where religion, I think, came into play was abstinence education. What are your thoughts on that as far as, again, maybe tapping into how you were raised and
Right.
if that applies there?
I think we should teach kids everything, right? We should teach them about love, about waiting until you are in love and you're old enough and responsible enough. I mean, my daughter's 5, so we don't have real serious conversations about that, but my wife and I have talked about teaching her about everything. I think that sometimes those who have very strong religious convictions and go to church every day don't even talk about safe sex or any of the other realities that every generation has more and more pressures. So I think we should teach everything. You want to cut down on the number of unwanted pregnancies? Well, you need to talk about preventative measures up front. And turning a blind eye to that is, I think, a mistake. Kids are a lot more mature than every generation before them, and they're able to have these conversations if we can do it in a productive manner. But my daughter, at a young age, will understand the importance of abstinence, and my son too, abstinence, safety, whatever, and I want to develop a very trusting relationship in my home where we can talk about those things. And sometimes as parents we fail. I mean, we're human, but we should as a community realize the reality of this situation, that if you're pro-life or you're pro-choice, none of us want unwanted pregnancies. And in order to cut down on those number of things, we have to be realistic in the conversations we need to be having with children.
Anything else to add that I didn't hit on? I mean, some other topics that we've heard talked about with regarding religion is entitlements. and saying that, you know, the church is the most, you know, giving as far as looking out for those less fortunate, but we don't want to give too much.
I mean, that's a tough issue. You know, I'm very socially liberal, but I'm also a little bit of a fiscal conservative. In my household, I know the importance of living within your means, of saving for the future, of having money for retirement. But at the same time, my heart bleeds for those that don't have the opportunities that I had growing up, or that my wife had growing up, or that my children will have. So you have to strike that balance. We need to give as much as we can until that return on investment makes sense, and then we have diminishing returns. And I look towards my faith when it comes to what are we doing to provide children these opportunities. You know, we want everybody, it seems like we want everybody to fit within this mold, but they don't. You know, the poorest kids in Brownsville are really struggling compared to those from some of the suburbs of our larger cities in Texas. So, and at the same time, I think we need to truly sit down and work with communities who have generational issues with entitlements. You know, my father, who is one of the most giving men I know, was approached a couple years back by someone who said, you know, who was, I wouldn't say bragging, but they were saying how excited they were that their children were the fourth generation to receive welfare or to live in a certain, you know, colonia. And my dad's like, well, why are you excited about that? You should be striving to have them do better. And I think that, you know, we want these things, but that balance between doing too much and not doing enough is what we have to strive for. So, you know, as I move forward, I hope I raise my children to have a good moral compass. And I think that that's what religion does. It provides a great moral compass for us. But that moral compass is not only influenced by religion, it's influenced by our families and our friends and our community. But ultimately, that moral compass should also include whether or not we want to respect other people's beliefs and not be legislating or creating policy that allows them the freedom in our great country, who was founded by people fleeing from religious persecution, to think and live the way they want to live.
I'll just give you the opportunity. Any thoughts that you would want to add on, you know, we've heard God invoked when talking about guns, and that it's a God-given right.
I don't know if I were to rewind 2,000 years and talk to Jesus and say, what do you think? You think guns is a God-given right? I think he preached peace for the most part. You know, I understand people wanting to protect themselves. I do. And, you know, I may have voted for the open carry bill had they done a few things to provide some safety. My fear isn't those that carry guns. It's those that want to take the guns away from those that carry guns, right? Those people who are mentally unstable, who may not be CHL holders themselves, but see Eddie Lucio, who weighs 160, and not a very big guy, who has a gun on his hip that they could probably overpower and take away. There were safety holster amendments. There were, you know, continuing education amendments. There were all sorts of stuff, amendments that they just wouldn't even entertain. And if we're not going to try to, you know, have a bill that makes sense and maintains public safety, I just couldn't support that. But I'm from South Texas, very large hunting community, very big supporters of NRA, but I just don't think that that bill did enough to create a safe environment in which, you know, when I go to, you know, Walmart with my daughter, if there's a 22-year-old with a gun on his hip, that's a safe environment for the community in general to be in. I'll tell you, when I was 22, I wasn't very mature. I'm hoping I am now, but it's a tough issue. That's why I couldn't support campus carry, because there's never a time where a young person is more unstable than when they're in college. And surprisingly enough, we have enough of them graduate and become productive adults, but it just didn't seem like an environment that I thought guns should be prevalent in.
One final question, we'll let you get back to the floor. You talked about, you know, how you don't want to, your faith is a base for everything you do as far as value system and whatnot. A lot of what we hear from different members is that they're representing their constituents.
Right.
You could argue that a lot of people in South Texas are of Catholic or religious faiths, why then not represent that in that way when you get here?
I try. You know, when I was in 2007, and since that time, if they bring a bill to me that makes sense, I might vote for it. But every time they bring a pro-life bill, they make no concessions. If it's a bill dealing with funding, I said, well, what about someone rape or incest, or fetal abnormalities, or viability of the baby? No concessions. So if there was an effort to say, let's have common sense legislation when it comes to issues that the pro-life community or the Catholic community cares about, I would want to be at that table. But they don't make concessions. They don't have reasonable conversations about what is best given as many scenarios as exist or could exist out there. You know, and you know, same thing with the gay rights issue, or gay marriage, or civil unions, or any form thereof. Is there's just this all or nothing attitude, and I don't think that we should have winners or losers in government, especially when we're talking about people's lives. You know, I've heard from, very emphatically, thinking I was the one that carried that piece of that amendment to the bill in the Senate, saying I've been in a loving, caring relationship with my partner for 12 years, and we're good, productive members of our community. Why don't you want to give us basic rights? And so there's a lot of folks that we have to consider in this process, and when we have winners and losers, it's hard for me to vote for those bills or support those bills, because it really hurts people. And so, you know, I go back home and I have to answer to the voters. I'm doing the best that I know how with my moral compass and with people that I care about and I think that should be represented here. And I have to go home, and this generation, these cameras here, what you're going to tweet in 10 minutes, or I'm going to tweet in 10 minutes, instant feedback. So, you know, I hope I'm doing what my constituents want, and I hope they send me back here.
Representative, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very, very much.